My new book, Pillars for Life, A Guide to Spiritual Ethics and Practice, is now out and available for you to read and purchase. You can check out our website, willowhealing.org, to find a link, or you can find it on Amazon. We look forward to getting your feedback, and if you love it, please leave a review and share with your friends. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine Cristani with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I am joined by the beautiful Megan Pasierbek. So she is an internal family systems therapy practitioner and a women's coach who helps high-achieving, self-aware women heal the deeper emotional patterns that traditional therapy and mindset work often miss. Through IFS, which is our short term for internal family systems, she is able to create somatic awareness and transformational journeys. Megan guides women to heal relational trauma, get out of their heads, reconnect with their hearts, and release old patterns, which results in greater confidence, joy, and purpose in love, work, and beyond. So a big welcome to the show, Megan, and I'm so excited to be interviewing you.
Thank you for having me, Catherine.
Well, I want to start with the first question, which is exactly what I asked when I met you, was what is internal family systems? What is that actually all about?
So, internal family systems is a type of psychotherapy, and it's built on the belief that we are made up of all these different parts. And just a little backstory to that. So, the man that I guess discovered it or created it is Dr. Richard Schwartz, and he was originally like a family therapist. And what he found was with his individual clients was that they almost have this internal family going on within themselves. And sometimes we have parts of us that work together, and sometimes we have parts that actually want the opposite things. And that can create inner turmoil or problems or us repeating patterns or what people might call self-sabotage, which we don't look at it that way through internal family systems. We look at it as in that's a protective part and it's doing a job. And there'll be a really good reason as to why it's doing it. And we have three types of parts. So we have what we call the self. The self is who we are underneath all our trauma, underneath all our conditioning, underneath all these beliefs that we maybe know now that they're not serving us anymore. But when you return to self, you can have a real clarity and a confidence that that's who you really are. And then we have protective parts, and protective parts developed because of a trauma or just a moment in time, generally in our childhood, but doesn't have to be, where we felt scared, upset, or just completely overwhelmed. And it's not necessarily the event that it was, it's generally that we didn't have a safe adult there to comfort us or give us what we needed afterwards or during. And that's where I guess the rupture occurs. And so this protective part starts this job to protect us. And sometimes you might have a client that comes to me and they're like, I just can't stop raging at my kids. And I'm like, okay, let's work with that part. But it'll take us eventually back to a memory where it's protecting like an inner child part of them. And once we're able to understand the part, get to know it, build a trusting relationship with us, and it shows us the memory, then that's the third category of part. There's what we call exiles, but they're inner child parts, essentially. Wounded inner child part.
Yeah, and I love that there's that beautiful system, and it's really coming back to the trigger. And for us as a child, no matter how big or small it is, it was still big for us as a little human, right? And there's still a reason why we took on whatever it was that came from that.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people sometimes will go through life and they're doing something like repeating a pattern and they can't figure out why. And we always, in every single session of mine, when I'm working with a part, what pops up, I've never had this not happen, is an intellectualizing part. And they're like, oh, but that wasn't such a big deal. Or I don't think it's this. And I'm like, okay, thank that part for expressing what they've shared, but can we just ask them to step back? And then we're able to just trust the system because you're right. That might not look like a big deal looking back, but it was a huge deal to say your 5-year-old self.
Yeah, and I can so relate to this because I had this memory when I was younger, and I think my mum was just having a bad morning. And I asked her so calmly, saying, would you mind cutting my sandwiches square instead of triangle? Because
in my mind, there was more crust on a triangle than there was on the square, right? So it's still there. And she just kind of blew up. She's like, fine, will you make your own sandwich? And just completely reacted. So the little 5-year-old in me went, okay, I guess I have to make my own sandwich every day now. And I can't ask for what I want. And so then that filtered into my life, and then I made my own sandwiches from when I was 5, and then I stopped asking for help from people, and I had to really unpack that. But it came back to that memory where it all kind of started from this one thing, and I'm not angry at my mum about it. It's just that's what happened. But that's also my little person's interpretation. I could have been really rude about it. I don't know. So it's really just trusting that is what set up that pattern.
Absolutely. And you make a really good point about that. Like that was such a big deal to your younger self. And we might look back at that and go, oh, it was just a sandwich. It's no big deal. Or we have parts of us because when we're in self energy, or what I like to call your heart energy, who you really are, you naturally have compassion for that younger self. But the things like that, these tiny moments where we didn't get what we need, or we were told, make your own sandwich, or even just a, hey, mum, look at me do this dance, and she's busy and she's not looking at you. Again, we go, oh, that's not a big deal. But when you are a child, we depend on our parents for our very survival. And if they say something to us that we get the message, okay, I'm not important, my needs don't matter, you're not seeing me. Hey, if you don't see me, like if you literally don't see me, you won't feed me, you won't take care of me. And like intuitively, our little selves know this. And that's why it can feel so overwhelming, because we need our needs to be met by an adult.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel we so underplay how much our little child, and even I read this book and it talked about, even if you think you had the perfect childhood, there'll be something in there that you've still set up as a belief system. And sometimes it can be like, everything's going to be fine and dandy. It can even be at that extreme, rather than seeing, and I know I've had clients who just constantly choose to see the good in people. And I was like, I love your optimism, but sometimes we just have to acknowledge that they're an a-hole and what they're doing is really terrible. And you don't have to forgive, you can forgive them, but you don't have to forget that they've done that. You don't have to be nice to them. They're being terrible to you. Like, stop giving away your power in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're parts as well. They're protector parts that are trying to see the good in people, because at one point they learned that actually serves me, that keeps me safe, that keeps me approved of, loved, all of those things.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And how did you come across this work? Because did you stumble into it, or you were like popped up on your Instagram? Things like that tend to happen to me. How did you come across this?
Yeah, so a bit of a long story, but I did study psychology in my 20s, and then I dropped out halfway through because I didn't like the side of psychology that felt very clinical and not human. To be honest, just statistics as well. Just I was like, I don't know. So I dropped out and I went on other career paths, and then I came back. I'd always been into personal development, and I did a course in internal family systems in 2021, and it was just for my own personal development. And I formed a mastermind with a group of women, 3 other women, and we met every single week and practiced it every single week on each other. So I did it from pretty much 2021 onwards, but it wasn't until I think 2023 it changed my life. And all of the work I'd done with talk therapy and all these other modalities they made me understand why I was the way I was, but they didn't help me feel it. And this was the work that I started to become more regulated. I started to heal things that had been there forever. And I was constantly dysregulated and didn't even know that was my normal state. And 2023, I decided that no, I'm going to pursue this. And then I went and studied officially, like with IFS Institute, although that training was pretty much the same course that I did in 2021, just wasn't the official course. And yeah, I just started working with clients and using it. And I see it in my clients, like it just changes. And it's like the very thing that they couldn't access, say, within talk therapy, or talk therapy says, okay, tell me your entire life story. But we're not actually getting to the thing that's showing up in their life at the moment, i.e. the protector part. That will then take us to the memory that's going to show us why that part is acting the way it is. And because it's an actual trauma therapy, and what constitutes a trauma therapy is there's a release component in it. So in the memory, we are able to get the parts to release anything they're carrying, any feelings, any somatic stuff that's in their body, help them to like breathe that out and release it. Then they feel lighter. And it's what everyone says after a session, but I actually feel lighter. Like they've released something in their body that's been there since say they were 5. And now suddenly there's all this space and more energy that can be used for good things.
Yeah. Which it's so important. I think people don't realize how much you need space for new things to come in, and also how holding on to these old stories and beliefs and all the old trauma is stopping you from expanding and stopping you from stepping into your authentic self, because it's almost, I always get like an image of the heart and all the beliefs are just encapsulating it. So you can't shine your light and you can't share yourself with the world.
Yes, that's exactly what it's like. I don't know who it was, one of the educators years ago had this analogy for IFS, but said self energy is like the sun. It's always there. It never goes away. It comes out every day, but some days there's clouds and you can't even see the sun or you can't even feel it's warm. And that's kind of like having way too many protective parts running the show. They're kind of in the driver's seat. And the aim of this work is to obviously help to heal, but to have self be in the driver's seat rather than the protective parts. Be more self-led.
Yeah, and that's so beautifully said, Megan. And I love that analogy of the sun, because that is so perfect, because it's true. The sun's always there, like our true light, our true soul path is always there. We just have to get through all the things that are stopping us from seeing it.
Absolutely.
And so then you also have a component, which I didn't mention in the bio, which is then you also bring in psychedelics to help the women that you coach and those that you're working through IFS. So how did that piece come in as well? I'm always curious how these pieces come together.
Yeah. So again, I did my first psychedelic journey in 2022. I healed things I never thought I'd be able to get to, that I'd never be able to like get past. But it changed so many things for me. And so I continued to do psychedelic journeys myself. And then I did a psychedelic journey in 2023. And the journey said, you need to go and study this and become a facilitator and share this work with people. So I went and studied it. I applied to get into this course that 2 of my colleagues were getting into to be a facilitator. And they said, sorry, we're full. And then someone pulled out and I ended up getting a space. So I studied that in September 20. And I just work with psychedelics. I only work with psilocybin and MDMA, and I'll only work with people that I've worked with in a therapy capacity first. And the beautiful thing about IFS is that it works very complementary to psychedelics. And I've even heard Richard Schwartz, the creator of IFS, say that anyone that's ever had a bad trip, the only reason why they have a bad trip is because they didn't get proper permission from a protector part first. I'll work with someone for 12 weeks in IFS before we'll do a journey because it preps them. They feel safer. If those parts come up in the journey, they're able to talk to them and work through it. And I don't think that medicine is a magic pill. And I do have a lot of people that come to me and they're like, I want to do a journey. I'm like, therapy first. And they're like, no. And I'm like, I won't work with you. And not just that, that allows me to assess if it's appropriate for them because it's not appropriate for everybody. But when I don't believe it's a magic pill, I believe it integrates the work you've already done.
Yeah.
Not just that they've created that.
Yeah, and I so agree, Megan. Yeah, apologies, we're glitching then. But I so agree with what you say, because so many people become reliant on things like that, reliant on the tools, rather than just using them to help you get through that block or get to the next stage of the journey. And I've interviewed some beautiful people that actually teach people how to actually be a psychedelic facilitator and things like that. And they all say the same theme, which is what you were touching on, is that it is a medicine, it is a tool, that it's not to be relied upon. And you develop a relationship with it, which is there that I am respecting you and I am using you just to help me through this part of my journey. And then I'm not going to, misuse you, because at the same time, the plan itself still has an energy. The plan itself is still there to show you what you need to see. But if, like you said, if you're not ready for that, then I met someone and he had nothing happen the first go. And he's like, oh my goodness, why was it nothing? And he's like, everyone was talking it up and he was so excited, and then nothing happened at all. And and then the person went, you need to do more healing because you are not ready to open anything up, exactly like you said. So then he went back and he came back a few months later and he goes, and then it was like a very interesting experience. So, I've used Repay, which I've had a couple of times, which helped me learn to discern between my ego and my inner voice. And I always say to people, like, quiets the voices in my mind so that I can get to the true me. But I only used it for so long. And then my body went, no, we don't need that anymore. And I was like, great, I don't need that anymore. And even if I was offered it in a ceremony, I was like, no, thank you. My body's saying no. And to learn that that's your discernment at that moment is really important too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you said, and my mentor that I learnt under, she really drove that point home for us, that you respect the medicine and it does have its own energy. And also that we respect our clients' own ability to heal themselves. And I don't believe in going like huge hero doses or anything, like lower dose and let their own magic work the way it's meant to. Like they are the medicine essentially, and everything that they need is within them. And that's why I love IFS so much, because I'm not this therapist talking. I'm just guiding them through a process, but they're finding the answers within. They're finding the memory. They're finding the wisdom. Like, and the medicine is all within them. And that's what I love about it. It's so empowering. It's like sometimes talk therapy can seem a bit like the therapist has all the answers, which is entirely not true. I think people place their own power in the hands of others, but really it's about coming back to you and knowing that you have your own ability to heal yourself. And it's just a tool you
Yeah.
are.
100%. And it's that power shift, right? To not put your power in somebody else and let them be your savior, but rather leave that power and realize you have the power in you. And yes, we still need support and we still need to be challenged, which is why you go find people who you trust. And I always say to people, if you're not in crises, that's the best time to go find people, because you're not going to be reacting. You're actually going to be more intuitive about it rather than, I just need someone right now to stop this and help me and get me through this, So then you're looking for the savior instead of, okay, I had this experience. I don't want to do that again. How can I learn to empower myself so I step out of that, pattern, or I step out of that cycle, or I step out of that story so I don't have to be the victim anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what you want, right? You want your clients to be empowered. You want them to feel that way. And I always say, it's my job to make myself redundant. I want a client to get to a point where they can go on their way and they don't need to work with me anymore.
My coach jokes and says if we had better friends, we wouldn't need coaches because they just support and challenge us.
There's absolute truth to that. 100%.
And we're all like, and then he goes, so I'm your friend because I support and challenge you and I care about your dreams and I want you to get there. So I'm going to keep supporting and challenging you. And I was like, yes, you are.
Yeah, so true. And that's the thing, a lot of friendships, they don't have that honesty where, you can go to friends and say, what are my blind spots? Or what do you think I could be doing better in my life? Most people just freak out at that question.
Or they let you stay in a situation. I still remember when I left my first husband, all of my family and all my friends were like, oh, we never liked him anyway. And you were never happy with him. And it was just like, why didn't you say something? They're like, oh, because you seemed to think you were happy. So we wanted to respect that. But then part of me is like, I wish you did say something. And then my husband went through the same thing too, and he's like, I wish people said more, or people, his friend did say something to him at the altar when he was waiting for his ex to come here. And he's like, that's not probably the best time to bring this up, but at the same time, it's just, and then when I met his friends, they actually said thank you to me because they're like, he's actually happy now. And I was like, well, that's nice. They go, we don't even know who you are. We just know that he's happy. And I was like, isn't that a contrast? But if you have better friends that call you on that, then maybe you wouldn't end up in that situation, or maybe you would because you're not going to listen to them anyway, but who knows?
Yeah. And it's one of those things, it's such a delicate balance, being able to tell your friend what you see, or, also there's something empowering in letting them get there on their own sometimes, and just, it's their journey. And maybe that's just the path they're meant to be on. And I've had situations with friends that have come to me and they've said something like, this is going on with my partner. And any friend would get really quite pissed off and be like, just leave him, or, those kinds of things that people say. And I just said, I remember having coffee with a friend. She told me about this situation with, they're not together anymore, but she said, there's all this stuff going on. And I just said, well, I'm always team you, but I understand that this is really hard. And I know that you'll make the right decision for you whenever you're ready. but I want you to know that, like, I don't judge you for this. And I know you can't probably talk to your family about, or anyone about this. So I want you to know that you can come to me and talk to me about it anytime. And it's like that kind of support, but just being able to say, like, I'll always be team you and I'll always support you, but also I understand this is really hard. Like, people see things in such black and white, and it's like, you just
Mhm.
can't tell people to leave. You can't tell people to live their life. Like, that's the journey. And it's hard to hold
Yeah.
back giving advice. Like, the amount of times a week, I'm like, I want to give unsolicited advice to people, but I'm just like, no. Like, and I know that part of me because I've experienced it. And it's like, that part of me is just trying to focus on other people so I can avoid focusing on what's going on with me.
I had this thing when I started getting intuitive hits and I would just drop it on people. I was like, oh, maybe I should actually ask them first if they want what's coming through. So when I started doing that, then they were actually more receptive to it too, because it'd be like, hey, I got a message for you. Are you open to it? You know, or I had something come through for you, you know, but it's also, I think part of us is, and I love what you said, like just creating that space for your friend to come to you if they needed to. But then I feel sometimes this is so important why I have my podcast too, is because sometimes sharing our own stories and sharing our own journey and what's happening can be enough to be an inspiration for someone else to know that they can do it too. Or I like to plant seeds. So you might not, you come from a very non-judgmental point of view, but you might go, you know, I heard this person, you know, was in this situation, which might be very parallel to theirs, and you've had them as a client or something. And, you know, they did this, this, and this, and now they're like living a life like this. So it's not telling them what to do, but it's almost showing that there is another option. There is another ability to choose a different path because we always have a choice. And in the end, we can't make the choice. We can only be there and hold space.
Absolutely. And one thing I always say, and I think that this, you know, if you're a coach, if you're a therapist, like, the thing people need the most is just to meet them where they're at, and just to be met and seen and heard and met with compassion, like, regardless of what it is, or regardless of whether you agree with it or not, or you have protective parts that are like, that's shit, get rid of him. Like, just being able to, like, meet them and go, that's really hard. I'm sorry you're going through that. Just to be able to see them and say, that would be really frustrating. I can see how
Yeah.
that would be really confusing for you, or whatever. Like, I watch my clients do it, in meeting their parts. That's when we create that trust with their parts. It's like understanding they're doing it for a reason, and there's something in that for them. And it's also, there's this beautiful book written by Richard Schwartz called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For. And it's about relationships and about how we don't actually, when we're having a fight with our partner, we're not fighting with them. It's our 5-year-old self. And when that 5-year-old self is triggered, it will then trigger their little part. And you imagine 2 5-year-olds having an argument. They're not going to get very far. And that's basically what we're doing. It's like, when we stay in, say, situations or relationships that probably aren't good for us, it's because there's a part of us that believes that if this relationship ends, or if this person leaves me, that then confirms that very belief that my 5-year-old self is holding on to, such as, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, people always leave, like, whatever it is. And it's like, that person is just trying to protect that part of them. And it's very tender, and you have to have compassion for it.
And I know you work a lot with people who are people pleasers and have the self-doubt and everything, but a lot of that does come from that. We're just being protective, and it's like, if I don't express myself how I really want to and just say what I know that they want to hear, then I don't have to deal with the conflict, you know. And then because we do often want to avoid conflict, we don't want to run into it, but at the same time, sometimes you need to have the conflict, otherwise you end up becoming a shell of yourself too.
Yeah. But that, for those people, say, conflict avoidant people, some people, when they were children, seeing conflict meant they were very unsafe, whether that was emotionally or physically, but they were actually unsafe, or they felt very unsafe, or that created rupture with their caregivers, and they need their caregivers to survive. Like, they know that. So conflict as an adult, if they haven't dealt with that, that's a younger part underneath. It's so afraid. It's like, we'll just go to fawning, go to people pleasing, you know, try and be that person. And what can be really hard for recovering people pleasers is that they've always done that. So they've created relationships for 20 years off the back of people pleasing. When they start saying no, or go the other way, because they're just like, I'm so sick of this, people get upset, or people get shocked by that, and they realize. And often, if we haven't looked at the whole system, like, I work in my group program with people pleasing, but we do it in order of, so the first part we really look at is like the inner critic, because you can't heal people pleasing if you haven't first healed the inner critic. Because if you start setting boundaries and people get upset with you, the inner critic will jump in and be like, you're so selfish. I can't believe you upset your friend, and go on this rampage, and you'll feel all this shame, and no one wants to feel shame. So then we go right back to people pleasing, because it's like, avoid that feeling and go back. But it's like we need to be able to deal with all of the parts that are existing within the system and calm each of them and let each of them be seen and heard in order to like create more harmony, really.
Exactly. And I guess it comes back to just being able to find that peace within yourself. And I have a client at the moment actually, and because she said no, the people she said no to don't like it at all. Like they're pushing back in such an extreme way. And she's learning how to say really powerful no's, because like exactly like you said, you've built these relationships for 20 years being a people pleaser or being someone that doesn't speak their mind. And then all of a sudden you change. People will either stay or they'll go. And if they go, don't run after them. That's my advice. They're not meant to be around you if they've gone.
Yeah. And also relationships are tricky, right? And it can be really hard as people pleasers when that's what we've done, and there's conflict, or suddenly there's no, or suddenly there's that other end of the spectrum. I did a post about this the other day, that we can heal one part of us and then another problem presents itself, but really it's just another part in the system. Like you can have, a part where, I don't know, say you have a routine of meal prepping and, eating really healthy and taking care of yourself, but this part can be a bit rigid and restrictive. So you're like, okay, we'll work with that part. So we work with that part, and then the restriction goes away, but then there's another part that steps in and goes, well, I don't want to do anything. I'm going to eat macas every day. So it's like knowing that it's all there and being able to work with those parts together in order to, I guess, when there's a people pleasing example, it's like you could go the other way and start like slamming doors and raging at people and say, no, I'm not doing it. And they're like, oh my God, like what? I've only known this person for 20 years and they've become a different person who's raging at me. It's like being able to, know what's going on, and just like most people might run away because that's like, this person's turned into a monster. They haven't. It's just their system's trying to balance, right? And it's like being able to have the hard conversations, being able to, both look at each side of the story, and for that person that's recovering people pleaser to be able to speak up and start communicating that, saying, hey, I've always been a people pleaser and I don't want to do this anymore. Like they know that, but being able to have those honest conversations, even though it might feel really hard. And one thing I teach everyone when I'm talking about my work is that start using parts language, and you can do this in every one of your relationships. Like when there's a part of you or you're angry, just say, hey, there's a part of me that feels really angry. Well, there's actually a part of me feeling really resentful because I've always been saying yes to you, and I sometimes want to say no. Can we talk about it?
Yeah, and having that invitation can be such a powerful thing, because in the end, especially if it's a relationship, you do want a win-win-win, but sometimes if you've changed, and I always say you grow together or you grow apart, right? And it's giving yourself permission that that's okay too.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. It's okay to let go of things that don't align anymore.
Yeah. And as we start to finish our time together, Megan, I asked the guests that come on the show, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
It's a good question. I would say, and I do believe this in my work, I believe that if everybody healed their own trauma, like it would just change everything. Like imagine if we could live from self-energy primarily, like that's the naturally compassionate version of you. I think it would solve all of your problems. And if you even look into the research around people who have physical illnesses like cancers and things, they often have, histories of trauma and it's been unresolved. Or like I've heard about studies where there were women with breast cancer and they tended to be these overgiving people pleasers and not saying anything.
Yeah.
And if you look, even people, like we've all been affected, or know someone that's had breast cancer, like everybody will say about that person, she's so lovely, she doesn't deserve this, she'd give you the shirt off her back. But it's like, that's that overgiving. And it's like, if we could heal our trauma and not have these parts running our lives that maybe don't serve us anymore, they did once upon a time, not to shame them, but to heal that, I think that it would change everything. I think that people would solve 99% of their problems if they actually healed their trauma, big and small.
100%. I wholeheartedly agree. And also, that compassion for yourself, like you said, is so important, right? Like having that compassion and, you know, just allowing yourself to go through that journey and allowing yourself to see what happens. And I guess that's when, the internal family systems become so useful because it allows a structured system for you to have that support at the same time while you're unpacking all the ick.
Yeah, and also with the self-compassion piece, I do believe that blocks a lot of people from really truly healing. But that piece, it's not victimhood. And I think a lot of people get stuck there, like, I don't want to be the victim. I don't want to like wallow in that. It's like, it's not wallowing. It's actually taking back your power. Having compassion for that
And
little person.
feeling.
Exact. And feeling your shit.
Yeah,
Like you have to feel it to like move through it and let it move through your
exactly.
body. Yeah.
Exactly. And 100, so well said. You have to feel it and let it move your body. There's that feel it to heal it, right? You'll hear people say this all the time, everyone listening, but it's so true. Because if you don't sit there and you don't feel it, then nothing's going to shift because you're not actually letting it come to the surface and do what it needs to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And if people want to connect with you, Megan, or come and work with you, how can they find you?
So best place to connect with me is on Instagram, and my Insta handle is just Megan Pasierbek Therapy, or my website, which is just meganpasierbek.com.
Beautiful. I'll make sure to put all these details in the show notes as well. And Megan, thank you so much for coming and sharing about IFS, which I know is definitely your passion piece, and also everything you do to help women to come back to themselves so that they can shine their beautiful sun in the world.
Yes. Well, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.